everyone, and thank you for coming back and spending the last session with us. My name is Lana McLean, and I am a member of HAC and a part of the African Nova Scotia Mental Health and Addiction Initiative. Again, just want to spend the rest of the afternoon that we have together just having what we consider the best brains, and we consider our panelists today to be the part of the best brains practice given the topic of discussion around trauma and from a racialized lens. So I had the pleasure of surfing and between the 4 workshops today, and it was such a pleasure to hear different perspectives, and it was an opportunity to pull together for me some themes to help lead us through the next process. And more importantly, to give you folks an opportunity to have all 4 of our presenters. Reverend Laquita Porter unfortunately had to send regrets. She had another commitment. But an opportunity for us to have everyone together in the same room instead of separate but equal. But to have us have an opportunity to pick their brains collectively, and for the 4 participants or 4 presenters to actually have a conversation at times amongst themselves if they desire to throw some questions to each other as well. So I would like to just start off by stating that, you know, for Black families and communities, we have the critical task of preparing our children and our youth for the realities of racial hostilities and inequities that are inherent within our society today. And this conference looked at one of those, how those inequities cause harm. So I would like to give the panelists an opportunity to maybe think about the work you've presented to all the participants today, about if there's a key message that you would like them to walk away with. What or how can we reduce harm in the lives of people of African descent so we can create opportunities and locations of healing in their lives so the harm is mitigated as we move forward in the work we do as clinicians, lawyers, social workers, community members, educators. So anyone would like to start? Maybe Dr. DeGruy or Dr. Chapman.
Okay. All right, I guess, hello? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess based on my talk and some of the other talks I got to experience, I guess I would want people to start to acknowledge, accept, and actually investigate the role that racism plays in the health of African Nova Scotians. Looking at, and the mental health of African Nova Scotians, looking at racism and how it impacts education, how it impacts physical health, and to actually have that be one of the potential explanations for why you're seeing certain behavior. Dr. DeGruy and I were actually talking about how difficult it is in the Canadian culture to actually confront that, to talk about that, because it's so underground, and calling people out and actually being assertive is often thought of as rude, right? And so being able to advocate for your clients and say, you know what, I'm going to call that racism, right? So you don't have to, I'm going to. And let's talk a little bit about what that was like for you.
Anyone else want to respond? Teresa?
Yeah, I did my presentation today on infant mental health, and I think the take home for me is, you know, how does, building on what Jason has had to say, or Dr. Chapman, is, you know, how does racism interfere with your ability to develop relationship with your infant, with your child? So, you know, and building on what Robert said this morning, it's about, you know, reclaiming childhood for the children. So playing with your children, and one of my key messages was, you know, does your face light up when the child walks into the room?
I was just going to say, just in a very simple word, is to, my work is about healing. So it's heal yourself. I mean, that's kind of where it has to start, with you looking at your own stuff. And as we heal, we model that, right, for other people, and they heal, you know?
Yeah, in terms of healing oneself, one of the issues within the African Nova Scotian community is around access to clinicians primarily who have the capacity to interrogate, hold sacred those places that are intimate in our lives. So I'm curious about what you may want to offer up to folks in the room who are part of that co-authoring of healing with people of African descent. What would you like to offer up as a way to make the space welcoming, engage in a process that allows for healing? How do we talk about healing in our community? Maybe that's a location we might want to look at it starting, because our community tends to be avoidant of healing, defer to things as cultural normative behaviors or maladaptive behaviors, and look to, for the most part, look to the church or look to God for the healing to occur. So not everyone, as we spoke, as Dr. Porter, as Reverend Porter said, not everybody's churched. And that certainly is a vulnerable place with a protective feature in our community that's no longer always accessible historically. So I'm just curious about how do we want to start languaging what healing looks like in our communities and in our families and with ourselves. I'm wondering what folks can put out to the members in the community that's gathered today.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about that, though not very loudly, apparently.
You want to try the other one, Robert?
Yeah, it's fine. I have confidence in the guy in the back of the room. I guess in a lot of the work that I do, I talk about breaking the silence. And I think if a person wants to pursue healing, they need to break the silence of their own need for healing. Right? And that is very scary. But it's about, not to get too biblical, but, there's, biblical principles around confession and its value. Mm-hmm. And it's, for me, on a personal level, it starts with not being afraid to say, I've got this problem, right? And you first do that in the safest place that you can find to do it. With your mother, with your brother, with your sister, with your grandmother. Find someone that you are going to consciously adopt or reach out to test whether or not they can be the person that you can reveal that to. Now, you might test them, they might fail, but don't give up the project, right? You need to start by finding someone. Even if they don't have the capacity to facilitate your healing, they can at least hear your story, right? And I would say that that's the first piece, break the silence. You go from that to then integrating the truth of your story into your life, which means, I remember I was in your home. We were sitting around a table. There was a group of men having a conversation, talking about growing up. And, and someone said, well, your father is so-and-so. And I said, yeah, that's my father. And they're, oh, everybody loved your father. And my truth is that my father was abusive. So I spoke the truth with the men I was sitting with, who I loved and who but, I have come to the place in my life where I can speak that truth. And by speaking my truth, it changes the conversation and it draws to me the love and support that I need from my friends and gives them the opportunity to speak their truth. And now we're a healing community. See what I'm saying? So speak your truth. Start with doing that in the safest place possible that you can find, but never give up trying to find that space. And then integrate that principle and practice into your life. You'll be amazed at how the deepest, darkest secrets you have are shared by a lot of people around you. And you will begin your journey of healing and find community.
Thank you, Robert. Teresa?
Well, for me, what I'm committed to doing is probably, I think it is creating the awareness in my own family. I bought 2 books yesterday to take home, one to my dad, to take home and start the conversation about, where did this happen? Look at this history. This is not something I grew up knowing about. So, I don't think a lot of our families are aware of this information, then to speak the truth, of your story. First create some awareness and then create the healing and telling your own truth.
I guess going out to clinicians and teachers out there as well, that I would want you to appreciate just how profound it might be to be included in that healing process with a population that has had hundreds of years of trauma. That it is something sacred, it is something very powerful, and that it doesn't happen often. And when it does, that you've got that opportunity there, and it's a very, very important opportunity, right? Even if it's just to listen. And just remind yourself that I got to be a part of that and what that means.
Thank you. We heard a lot about relationships as a cornerstone to how we engage and heal, and how we develop locations of fundamental change. I'm wondering if you folks can speak a little bit more to relationships, and particularly because in our community here of clinicians or professionals in the room, the number of African Nova Scotians who actually do clinical work is very scarce. So it's then in the hands of primarily people of European or white folks to do the work. So I'm curious if we can tease out a little bit about what that means to create relationships when relationships is not your necessarily location as person, member to member versus member to object, how that can be a fundamental shift for folks to try to change that given our systems. And the other is, what are some opportunities, in the Nova Scotia context, about developing relationships for people who are Caucasian around allied opportunities?
Okay, I can speak to, and I don't know that much about your experience here in this country, but I have a very dear friend. His name is J. Ira Klusky. And Jay and I have been friends for probably about 30 years now. Jay has a clinical degree. He's a cognitive psychologist, graduated from UCLA. And for years, Jay would just come to the community, African-American community, and just sit in the room. He wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't try to fix anything. Nobody even knew who Jay was. After a while, Jay would, we would go places. We've done writing projects together. He works in the black community. For the first maybe 5 to 10 years, though, he didn't do anything but show up. He would be in the back emptying the trash after things. He would be, after a while, when he wasn't there, they'd go, "Where's that albino brother that used to be with you? Where is he?" They just made him black. And after a while, so many people thought Jay was black. He had a bald head and a little goatee, and he got so many people said, "Oh, you got black in you. Somebody's lying to you." He actually asked his mother, right? Was there something she needed to tell him? But what my point is that Jay became a friend first. He didn't come in trying to tell people what to do or trying to be, he never said anything. He was just there. He supported the community. And like every community of color I've ever been in, once you earn that, all of a sudden he was somebody's uncle. My kids refer to Uncle Jay, right? Mm-hmm. Because you become a member of our community, a member of our family. And that's one of the ways that you're accepted when, what do we give you? The highest honor. We make you a family member, right? That's why we have so many play aunts and play uncles and second moms and second dads. So part of what I say to those who want to be allies, just show up and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to, that you're going to say the wrong thing. You probably will, and somebody in our community will tell you, right? But they'll fully expect you to show back up. They don't want you to go away. That's the key. And I always say to folks, we don't always have to agree, but please stay in the room. Just stay in the room.
I think I said this yesterday, this whole idea of recognizing that relationship is key may draw you out of your comfort zone. And recognize that part of your job is to create and sustain clinical relationship with your clients. Sometimes that is going to be a part of your job. And if you're not comfortable with that, Okay, so then you have to rethink then how you're going to show up. But I think that thinking again about MST, that multisystemic kind of treatment work, it may be your job to find a relationship for your client. So I've had clients in the past where I've said, okay, our task over the next little while is to find you a grandmother. Okay? Because you need the love and affection that only a grandmother can give you, and you've been disconnected by your biological family. The people in your group home can't provide that for you. So let us find for you in the community someone, not someone who can take you into their home to foster you, but we need to find you a grandmother. Okay? And I've walked with people through the process of finding a grandmother, and I educate the grandmother, and I work with the grandmother, and I help the grandmother to figure out how they can show up in the lives. So the relationship is key. If you can't provide it, you can't just say, well, I'll just give them the best I can. Well, no. That's like trying to operate a vehicle without putting a battery in it. You need to get the relationship and then do the clinical work around the relationship.
It's very transformative. Oh, Teresa, were you good? Okay. I'm curious around how you might be able to be, and your willingness, if you accept this mission, to talk a little bit more about creating a positive racial identity. So if you can speak a little bit to that for folks who may or may not have been at all the sessions, just integrating that into our conversation. Then after that, I'll open up to the floor to take about 4 or 5 questions, and then we'll simply give each other a little hug from a distance. So looking at how to develop positive racial identity.
I visited. The reason why I'm looking a little different is they told me, first of all, Donna took me to Ariel's. Is that the name of it? Ariel's, and I had, jerk chicken. So I admit it. I went out. But we also went to the Black Cultural Center, which was absolutely amazing. And I was taken through the tour and told about the history, and I don't live here, but it was so enriching. It was so uplifting to be there and to hear, and you can feel and see the pride there. I think all children should be walked through that, that we have to expose people to that truth. Right? And so part of the positive racial social identity is, once again, bringing the truth forward for people to see, to witness, and to participate in. And to educate not just ourselves, and I think that this is the key. Everyone in this audience, you all are going to be okay. Well, most of you are going to be okay. I know, you never know. But most of us in this room will probably be okay. Even if you had difficulty or you had problems with something, you have enough self-efficacy to move through your lives and be okay. It's the people that aren't here. It's the people that are struggling, people that don't even want you to be here, that are mad this is happening, right? You have and everything in between, and all the people who are frightened, but more importantly, all the families that really need what we know. And I don't think we have to do it in a lecture, or it doesn't have to be done like this. I speak with families, I go to churches, I go to community centers, I show up wherever people are. And when they least expect it, I'm passing out the Erickson's model, I'm showing them, telling them what Piaget said, talking about ACE. And you know what? They get it. And they want more, and they're excited, but we don't ever share it. So part of that socialization is sharing what we know with everyone. This is not a secret just for the professionals. This is what the average person actually needs, and they get it. Why do they get it? When they end up in services with us. That's when they find out, I didn't know about that developmental thing. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to slap the kid in the mouth when they talk back. I didn't know. And this is where you say the virtual village. We create village. And that's how you do the racial socialization piece, like everything else. But everybody's got to show up for that.
I open up to the family at hand. Any questions for our distinguished panelists that you would like to, bring forward? Any question that you'd like to share? Any insights, any new insights to folks? I know they're brilliant, but come on now.
Quiet people.
That's right. We wore them out today.
Hi.
Hi, I just have a comment. Thank you so much. Dr. DeGruy, you said that in your graduate course that your students are transformed, and I can see how that would be because I feel that way. I'm also doing my master's in lifelong learning, and I work with offenders coming out of prison as well, so that's kind of where I'm at. And I think, Robert, you talked about yesterday, and I went up and told you how valuable it was about how, oftentimes we hear about the oppressor and the oppressed, and oftentimes you don't really think of yourself as the oppressor. And then we talk about white privilege, and we really need to unpack that because so much of racism, I can say, no, I'm not a racist, and I fully believe that. But then when we start to unpack the systemic racism, or those microaggressions that maybe we're not even aware of. I think that that's transformative too. And that this conference has really made me think about that, has made me think about, okay, how am I contributing to that? And what more can I impact from this? And I think that if I'm going to be fully effective in working with Black people, if I'm going to be fully effective of working with any non-white people, that I need to have a better understanding, but also understand myself really well. I have to do my own inner work. And so that's kind of what I'm walking away with, and so I thank you all for that.
Thank you. Now, somebody got to throw down a tough question around here, or even a loving gesture. Yes. Oh, okay. Loving gesture. Thank you. The young woman in the can you use the mic? Thank you very much.
I work at the IWK in inpatient mental health, and we were just talking amongst ourselves and wondering how we could make African Canadians and other communities feel more like the services we offer could help them.
Let Jason take that. I'm in recovery from the IWK, so.
Well, so am I. From that very unit that you work on. I used to work on what was called 4 South at the time. And it is unfortunate. We would have some African Nova Scotians who would come into unit, and I would say that by the time that they did get there, they were very, very sick because of the lack of trust, the barriers to get access. I think of one young woman who had been denied at Emerge 3 times before finally getting admitted, and this girl was floridly psychotic. And so, I think, what Dr. DeGruy said is we need to, as clinicians at the IWK, at these organizations, is reach out and just show up. Be there, right? I think where we failed in the past is we've gone to communities and said, all right, we want to do this. How does this sound, right? And we propose something as opposed to just being there and becoming a part of that community, becoming better able to understand those needs, because the community still might need to think about what those needs are and how those need to get expressed. So it's not going to be a quick thing. It's not going to be tomorrow. And in a lot of ways, it goes against some of the policies we have in institutions of getting things done really quickly, right now, getting people in and out. That might not work. We might need to focus more on the relationship first and put in the time, and that time might be years before we actually see the product. But then it'll be worthwhile, and it'll be the right thing to do.
Anyone else?
I guess when I think about how can institutions that deliver mental health services, how can they make things better? That's what this initiative is about. And this is not a 2-year project, right? This is a systemic intervention that is designed to increase the cultural competence of the mental health and addiction service delivery system, particularly as it deals with African Nova Scotians. And that's going to be a work that goes on forever. In the same way that building and maintaining our capacities to deal with specialized mental health conditions will be something we do forever, right? So part of the problem, though, is that this initiative is in its second year. And I think that people are already wanting, okay, so what's the number I call? I've got a person here, we should be able to pick up the phone and call and have someone come and deal with this problem. We're not there yet, okay? This initiative isn't there yet. Neither are we there yet that in every place where mental health service delivery is occurring, there's someone on that team who can say, I got this. I got this. So what do you do in the meantime? I'm saying, I guess I keep saying that if there was someone on your unit who did not speak English, we have a service for that. And there you can call, and someone will come, a translator, not just a family member who happens to speak both languages, because we know that that doesn't work, right? We call a language interpreter, right? Right? And that is part of our system that is compensated. Right? There are a growing number of mental health clinicians in this province who have the competencies that the system needs today. And we get called regularly to help out in those circumstances, to arrive as a community member to help and subsidize the system to provide more competent service. So recently, a friend of mine in my community was having a mental health crisis and was in the emergency department and left. And went back to the emergency department and left. Did that 4 times in the run of a week. Finally, another member of our community who had just flown in from out of town went to the emergency department with that person and said, I'm going to stay here with you until someone sees you. And 4 hours into that, they called me and said, Robert, can you come down here and sit with us? So I did. And 5 hours later, I had to leave. They had been there now 9 hours, right? But I stayed on the phone and coached them through and helped the system to understand their needs, and then they were admitted, and then I was there every day for the next 7 days, right? Helping this person to be able to get service from that system. I'm a bona fide mental health clinician. Right? I was doing that as a community member, however, and by virtue of doing that, subsidizing the health system. Okay? So I think that we need to, in the meantime, create mechanisms for finding this out. If we had 3 pathologists leave the province tomorrow,
Oh, they'd be looking hard.
we would have 3 per diem pathologists in this province on Tuesday. And we would pay them whatever we needed to pay them to bring them here from wherever they are. They would commute on the weekends to back and forth from wherever they are currently living, and we would do that until we fix the problem systemically.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that we need to start thinking about this problem in that way. Because this problem is directly related to the incidence of violence, crime, substance abuse, addiction, and a host of other ills that are occurring right now, the cost of which is much greater than finding a locum competent mental health clinician.
Just my 2 cents, yes. Yes, over here. If you could please go to the mic.
Hi, my name is Morgan. I'm a social work student at the School of Dalhousie School of Social Work, and we come from like a critical perspective, and we study the theories of development and attachment, and of course we look at how trauma affects that, but we also analyze it as being a Eurocentric and Western theory, and I'm wondering how that informs service delivery and how that affects children from different cultures whose families have different child rearing methods, and how certain decision makings such as child protection get in the way with that.
Good question. Really good question.
What was the last part of the question? You wonder how?
Child welfare.
Like child welfare agencies and other like social work professionals or mental health professionals, and make their decisions based on this westernized Eurocentric model.
Which causes harm.
Yes.
Anyone want to speak to that?
Well, actually, most people will ask, you already know the answers to that, and part of the answers are that folks don't get served, or they're served in a way that's, that's just not effective or helpful. Sometimes it's actually more harmful when we don't understand context, and I think that's the other thing that has kind of gone through this entire conference has been context, understanding from the lens of the person with whom you are engaging. Even assessment, it's amazing. I've actually read the notes of a psychiatrist based on adjudicated youth. And I was going, did he not see and understand the kid that was in front of him? It was like all wrong. And I had to get to the point. Now, this is a psychiatrist for the court. We eventually had him removed from all of our caseloads because he did not understand our children. Mm-hmm. He didn't understand why this gang member that had tattoos on his neck wasn't admitting that he was depressed. He said that he was a pathological liar. All the things that he said, I said, this kid is not getting ready to tell you that he's depressed. It's not even in his range of language to ever say that. So instead, he pathologized this kid, right? And the mother who said, I don't understand this report. No one had even sat down to explain to her what the implications were for what he'd written. So it's harm is the end of that. The other thing is when you have folks advocating, we can intervene in that system. We can step in and say, this isn't okay. And here's what we understand about that as clinicians, as professionals ourselves. And so it does require exactly what was said is we have to be called in, but this is about what you value, is it not? Mm-hmm. It's about where you're willing to put your dollars. You'll put your dollars there if the pathologist leaves town, but are you going to pay for that person to step in? Are you going to subsidize that? And that's where, the push is here. The rub is that we're not going to put money there. We're going to put money in what we know and believe to be true and real, even though we have mounds of research that says it's ineffective. And you have people over here saying, well, here's my point. Try anything different. Because if what is presently going on isn't working, let's just try something else. And if it fails, let's try something after that. But let's not keep doing the same thing that we know doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But that seems to be okay. I'm sorry I went off on the tirade here. But it just seems to be something that people are willing to just say, oh, yeah, thank you for saying, pass the mic. You know what I mean? That's what ends up happening over and over again. There are people in this room that can hold folks accountable. That's where the buck stops. And I'm going to tell you honestly, the very thing I tell my kids when they, because again, everybody here is very nice and polite, and I know that. I've had to learn that I'm too animated. But one of the things that I had to teach youth, you talk about, this is part of racial socialization. Once again, one of my kids went to the movie theater with his friend who was white. His friend wasn't asked for his ID. My son was, and he didn't have it, and he got in a big argument, and they called security and threw him out of the theater. And what I had to teach them is, first of all, never raise your voice. The first person that raises their voice in this culture you lose. Look, they've lost their decorum. I know I've sentenced you to death, but there's no reason for you to be so inappropriate and rude. What, get yourself together, So what I teach my children, what I teach other black people, what do you want? What do you want to get done? Do you want the zeros that were missing on your check back, or do you want to curse out the person that handed you the check? Which one? Because if you want to get the money back, that's not going to get it. You will feel better. You'll curse out the person who delivered the check. But they're not the reason why your zeros are short on your check. So whenever I tell my sons, I tell everyone, has someone done something wrong to you, here is what you do. It is really something that is so not normal for black people. But you have to first be quiet. Then you have to go, I'm sorry. What is your name? What is your supervisor's name, and how might I reach them? And it will stop right there, because you've not threatened them, you've threatened their object. I don't care what you think or feel. I don't care because the moment you yell, they go, there they go. Well, right? But when you go, I'm sorry, what is your supervisor's name? And what is the address so I can write this, which means it's now documented, which means it's an object in my file, which may affect my raise. Do you see? But I can scream at you, and I may feel better, but I'm not going to win. So part of what this process is, again, I have to teach. My son called me I was in another state. He goes, Mom, it's like magic, what you told me. It's like magic. All of a sudden, it gets straightened out. People are apologizing. Everything gets right. I said, because you did not behave in the way
They expected.
that they expected you to. You based it on their axiology, their paradigm, and not yours. And the bottom line is we need to understand everybody with whom we work. How many people here work with Asians, specifically Chinese or Japanese people, right? You're going to get a real few hands. You know why? Because they don't let you work with them. They work with themselves. Hence, when you look at the term group, highest value is in the group. The group in Chinese is written in characters, which has to do with the two parts together. They're characters, king and sheep. Interesting. So when you come in and say you're working with us, I don't think so. That's why we have Chinatown. Okay? And you can always come, but we also want you to leave. Because you understand, in order to work with that community, you got to work with someone in that community who then works with the community. So when I'm talking about people, it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. We're different people. But black people have always had to, white people aren't used to having to adjust. Everyone adjusts to the dominant culture. And now it feels like a push, because the whole time people of color have been in existence, we've adjusted to the dominant culture. And in a way, we've pretended, right? And now we're kind of going, no, I think I'm going to stand in my truth. And then people are going, well, I don't know what to do with you then. I call Harold. I'm not certain what to do. But we've got to learn to stretch, right? We've got to stretch, and we've got to insist. And those of you that have the power to do so, use your power. As Peggy McIntosh said to me, she says, if you got white privilege, spend it well.
At the risk of beating this question to death, I want to go to that question about the Eurocentric models of psychosocial development. Someone might have heard me say earlier or at another time, I'm kind of an Ericksonian. Did you hear me say that? These models are very valuable, but they're models. And I like to think of them as models constructed out of plasticine rather than out of concrete or iron. Okay? So all these models are, remember, this is psychosocial stuff. This is not engineering, and even there's some give and take. But it's just one person's attempt to describe what they are seeing, right? And so they build a model. What I love about Erik Erikson was that, do you know where he came from and why he got on this? Erik Erikson, Eric, son of Eric, right? Was a person who was the illegitimate child of a woman whose father, the person he grew up knowing as his father, was not his father, and his mother wouldn't tell him who his father was. And when he finally found out that his father was someone named Eric, he went on this personal journey of trying to find himself and became a developmental psychologist, claimed the name Eric, son of Eric, and then built a model to explain himself. I don't blame the brother for his model, right? He was trying to find himself. Good on you. Thank you. This is very valuable as a tool for me to try to find myself. But your model's built out of plasticine, so I can smudge it a little here, pull it a little there, add a piece, you know, roll up my own little bit and snap it on top of there. That's why I developed a model for understanding racial identity development that is meant to marry Erickson and modify Erickson to give me a better understanding of how it works for black people. And if you say, well, I'm not qualified to mess with Erickson's model, then you need to understand he was just a messed up white guy trying to find himself. I'm just a messed up black guy trying to find myself. We're brothers. Right? I learned a long time ago that these models are just models. And their developers are humans, not gods. And I'm as human as they are. And shucks, you know, did Ed ever tell you about the first correspondence I had with him? When I met him in 1988, his model was not finished. Wow. And being 24 and knowing everything, I finished his model and mailed it to him. And he was so kind to me. Right? Right? Because even then, I was not going to accept it as gospel because he and I were colleagues. You know, I was a 24-year-old undergraduate degree, and he was already retired from NIM. But you see what I'm saying? So I'm not offended by the models because they don't frighten me. Some white guys attempt to describe what he sees. Hey, I'll take a look at that. And I'll look at other things, and I'll add it to it, and so forth. So I think it is important to understand where they came from and the constructions and to think about how they're not working for us, and that's important. I guess what I would say about how it plays out in the formal systems is that there are people in systems who don't really know fundamentally what the practice of mental health service delivery is. They don't know fundamentally what the practice of child welfare is. And they're in these jobs wielding manuals. Right? Right? Because no one ever told them that really this is a human practice that is informed by information, not some kind of objective kind of practice, right? And so I think that we need to allow human service workers to be human and actually teach them how to be human. Remember did you ever do that PI, person and environment, clinical use of self, you know, all of that kind of stuff? We need to remember that. So when we go into our meetings, their case conferences and so forth, we need to be human. And we need to be, even like you say, we need to be able to say, I don't have a theory for it, and it's not covered in the manual, but this don't feel right. Now let's figure that out. One last story, and I'll shut up. When I was doing my graduate work, I was in the mental health unit in a state penitentiary, and I had a guy who had a major mental health condition who was sometimes so anxious that I used to ask the custody officers when he came down the tier to my office to leave his cell open. So he would come out of his cell and proceed down the tier, and sometimes he'd make it halfway down the tier before he was overcome by his own voices and paranoia and run back, and his cell door had to be open or else he couldn't retreat to the safety of his cell. I was thinking, how can I work with this guy? How can I work with this guy? Floridly psychotic at times. Maybe I should do some of the relaxation state work that I do with people. And I thought, well, would that actually reduce his anxiety? Or would it reduce his resistance to the voices and the paranoia? So I went to the literature. Nobody wrote about it. Does this kind of work with that population? And I was in the office one day with an older guy who's kind of he had been there a long time. He used to break all the rules. He's kind of cleaning his fingernails with his pocket knife. He brought his pocket knife into the prison because who's going to tell him he can't take his pocket knife inside? You know, me they pat down. Him, you know, it's all good. And I explained to him what I was doing, and he was a guy. He's been in the work a long time. He's kind of listening to me. You know, I'm the young guy who's going to school trying to learn all this stuff. He says, "Yeah, that's an interesting problem." I said, "Well, you got any ideas?" He said, "I haven't got a clue. Try it and see what happens." Mm-hmm. There's an awful lot of that goes on in mental health. And if you're doing it with the best interest of your client at heart, as Dr. Joy says, try something. If what you're doing isn't working, try something. And now if you're really good, document what you tried to do, and then document what the outcome was, and then, later on someone will give you a PhD. But just engage, try, do not feel confined and constrained by these models. It's all human science, right?
We have time for two more questions. Oh, no time. No time, we're done? Oh, wrap it up? Okay. Yeah, well, wonderful. Well, I just want to say thank you to Jason, to Teresa, to Robert, and to Dr. Joy for being able to give us your continued insights into how we can become better practitioners, better citizens, and how we can best inform our practices to meet the needs of members of the African Nova Scotian community. I also just want to say thank you to Donna, as always, for her commitment to moving things forward with HAC, particularly on this initiative. To Robert, my he's my second husband. Let's not say that too loud. No. Yeah, but to Robert, it's always a pleasure and a joy to be with you and to be among you. And it's a pleasure also to spend time with all of you here. And we thank you on behalf of HAC for spending time with us to interrogate or to investigate. I'm being mindful of Brother Brian. What this means as we move forward to do very meaningful work, creating and hopefully making meaningful change in the lives of people that we touch. And to do the work being mindful that our job is to do no more harm, but to create an opportunity for healing. I thank you to all the panelists once again. I thank you to Tracy and Vivian. If you have not met those women, they are dynamic. Absolutely dynamic, and I say thank you to you women for the partnership you have provided to HAC in the past 2 years as we've moved these conferences forward. Thank you for your excellence in work. Thank you very much. And I thank you all once again for taking your time out, for spending time with us, and to open yourselves up to possibility. Donna, is there anything that you would like to say on behalf of HAC? Oh, I'm going to hustle you all just for a moment. Will you please fill out your forms, your evaluations, and will you please become a member of HAC? This is an opportunity to build capacity for an organization that's making meaningful change within the African Nova Scotian community. And if you want to start being an ally, start by becoming a member. Straight up. It's only $20. It's only $20, but I thank you all once again. Donna?
I just wanted to say that we have a couple of sponsors today, and I want to thank the Buddy Day Institute. They provided us with some sponsorship, and as well Doctors Nova Scotia, and of course the province of Nova Scotia. I have to put that plug in. But thank you.